So good afternoon. My name is Brandon Tellez. I'm a committee member with the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition and a local multimedia artist. Today we're sitting down with Savannah Mitchell, who has been selected as a survey artist in this year's Momentum event. Savannah, thanks for joining us in this interview today. As we talked about a little bit before the interview, we'll kind of start out with your early life, your early connections to art. We'll move into your art now, your Momentum piece, which I'm really glad you brought for us to see today, and then we'll wrap up with what's next for you. So getting into our first question, when I look through a lot of your art, I notice a lot of themes of kind of nature and whimsy, kind of this idea of this combination of like reflection and exploration. Did you grow up with this kind of sense of exploration and innate curiosity, and like what draws you to recreate those kind of feelings and ideas?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've always been kind of drawn to these themes. I remember when I was a kid, I would love to get those like nature encyclopedias and just read as much as I could and just learn as much as I could. And I feel like in my own art practice, I like to inspire others to maybe be a bit more curious about these topics that I feel like are overlooked.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. So kind of growing up with that sense of exploration, can you talk about some of your early inspirations to make art? You know, were there any creators or artists that you were drawn to, or even just nature itself? You know?
I feel like mostly I just started drawing and doodling even at like a younger age, mostly like, you know, fantasy themes and nature and stuff. But I also really love the Spiderwick Chronicles and the artists and their way of like combining both like fantasy with like nature and these very like realistic species that were fake. But yeah, I feel like those things inspired me, and then as I got older, I kind of continued to explore those things in my work.
I do remember that from Spiderwick Chronicles too. This is such a distinct art style, and then like creating this whole world that feels familiar but different. Like it's such a unique skill, I think. Okay, so one of the things that you mentioned is you kind of like to bring out that idea of curiosity in others, and it's something I've noticed. You know, you've kind of been a leader within the community in a sense for a while, with starting with the Love Works leadership, and now I think you're at Imagine Music and Arts, or were potentially.
Yeah, I were.
But you know, what kind of drives you to push past just making art? Not to put that down in any way, but you know, and putting yourself out there to inspire others to get that sense of curiosity.
I think I enjoy learning, and so I feel like I want to be as knowledgeable within multiple areas, and I like making art for the sole purpose to hopefully inspire others and to educate others, and so I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand with taking teaching opportunities and volunteering with different organizations and things like that.
Okay, heck yeah. Yep. So your art is kind of almost sounds like it always has been outside of yourself in a way. Yeah, I love that. One of the things I think I saw that you had a little blurb of, but I really like this idea of curiosity and compassion kind of having this hand-in-hand relationship. Can you talk about that a little bit more, how you feel about that?
Yeah, of course. I feel like as we get older, at least with myself personally, I feel like I lost a lot of my curiosity and wonder with the world. And with that, I feel like I grew very cynical. And then whenever I kind of was able to start asking more questions and kind of be open to the world around me, I think in turn I became more patient and more compassionate towards others. And I think in general, when we don't understand something, we can be a bit more at guard with those subjects. But if we can just open the door to ask more questions and be curious, I think that allows for us to eventually grow some empathy and compassion for other people and other species.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great way of putting that. I really wish more people would kind of see things like that, and I think it's awesome to be able to put yourself out there and try and inspire that in others. One thing I've kind of really taken away from these interviews that I've been doing is that artists are really just no longer specializing or really niching down into things as much as I think they used to. And I really appreciate that we've grown to a point where artists can do art, you know, for yourself or for the love of art or to explore for really any reason. It doesn't have to be diving deep into just being a painter for the rest of your life, you know? So what do you think is your favorite medium to work with right now? And on the other side, what do you find yourself avoiding working with?
That's a hard question. I feel like I've always been a bit more drawn to like painting, but I think I'm feeling a bit more comfortable with like paper itself. I've been exploring a bit more with like paper mache and using like trash a lot to create new things. So I don't know, I feel like I may be one of those artists that likes to jump around a lot. And kind of oddly enough, the thing I feel the most uncomfortable with is like specifically illustration and drawing, even though that's like the thing I want to do primarily. I think I have like that mental block where it's like, if this is going to be my thing, I need to make it really good. And then, yeah.
No, I think you see that in a lot of artists, especially when you do kind of want to, hopefully, I'm sure, be able to build a life off of making art, you know, and like that's such a whole different struggle in itself and having to get through. That's awesome. I do love when you can bring kind of that 3D aspect to things and bring a lot more depth to it. It's so interesting. So we touched kind of earlier on some of those themes of nature and whimsy, and we've talked about curiosity a lot. I find that exploration and sort of that kind of play in art is the most fun and kind of the most affirming in my skills in art as an artist, when I just get to play and watch something come together. What changes have you kind of seen in yourself as you've embraced or started to embrace your identity as an artist?
Do you mean like, I guess, changes across my like art practice or just?
Yeah, or even just, you know, in your life, kind of just in general changes. But yeah, art practice could be a good place to start.
I definitely feel like I've become a bit more confident. I think that's one of the biggest things I've struggled with, is being a bit more self-assured, and if I'm making the right choices and pursuing an artistic degree and everything. But I feel like I've been able to take a bit more risks, try things where I'm using different materials rather than just the traditional like paper and pen stuff.
Okay, heck yeah, I love that. It makes me happy that art can be so explorative, I don't know, and that we have so much access to resources and to be able to just play around with it. Let's see, so you kind of touched on this next question that I have here, but you know, you've not only jumped into art as an exploration, you know, you've jumped into the educational side, now pursuing a degree in art. Now, I think I noticed that your goal wasn't really always to pursue art so strongly, and I think I kind of got a little bit of that last answer. Starting off as a pre-med major at OU, what inspired you to change direction? That's a huge...
Yeah. It was a big jump, honestly, because I've always enjoyed art, but I think I went through that period of time like most people where they kind of reject certain aspects of themselves. So like in high school, I remember taking a art class, and it was my favorite class. But I told the professor, I was like, no, I don't really like art. I don't really like this. But mostly I think it was because I was afraid that if I pursued art, I wouldn't have financial stability, and I just didn't like consider it as a real career. But then I went to OU, and I was doing the pre-med track, and I was immensely unhappy. And I just like was really wanting to continue doing artwork, but I never had time because pre-med is so like heavy. And then I took like one art class, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then I haven't really turned back since.
Yeah, okay. I love that. It kind of just became the way. That's awesome. What would you say is your biggest challenge that you've had or are currently facing as you're putting your art out there for the public?
I think one of the biggest challenges is mostly just, I guess, with myself. Just the confidence issues and having a lot of doubt. I think a lot of artists have issues with feeling insecure in their practice, and I definitely experience that, and questioning if I'm doing the right thing and if my work is even good enough. So
I think almost every single one of these interviews we've touched on the idea of imposter syndrome at least once. Like, it's so difficult to not feel, and like it's a benefit and a curse of having so many other good artists around and whatnot too, because it's hard not to compare or even just be down on yourself, and it's a world that I think can be just as difficult as pre-med in a way where like, but it's a whole different kind of difficult, you know, and pushing yourself through that I think is so beneficial, and getting to the other side where you do start to feel the confidence and like seeing your work for what it really is, you know, the way that other people see it in a way. Okay, so we'll move kind of more into the momentum-specific stuff. So, is this your first time working with OVAC, or have you kind of participated in any of the shows with OVAC in the past?
Yeah, this is my first time.
Heck yeah. So with it being your first time, what does this Momentum Art Show mean to you personally?
I feel like this is definitely a big step in terms of like putting myself out there. I'm really excited to meet some of the other artists who are going to be at the show. And I think this has helped me also feel a bit more confident in my own practice, and I feel maybe a little bit less like an imposter. So, yeah.
That's exciting. It's a huge leap, and it's an insane step to put something that's kind of so personal in a way out there and put it on display, and it's huge. So this is Cycle of the Soil. Mm-hmm. What inspired this piece for Momentum?
I'm really interested in like biological systems. A lot of like, I don't know, I'm really inspired by like growth and decay and how everything within like especially nature is connected. But I wanted to kind of explore how we ourselves are part of nature, but sometimes forget that. So a lot of these materials for this art piece are like grocery bags and receipts and trash. And it's just me, I guess, exploring that idea of how much we take, but in the end of the day, we will have to like give back just like every other thing in nature takes and gives.
Okay, I love that. So really representing kind of our cycle and our interaction with these things that, yeah, we don't think or really put as much thought as we could definitely into how we impact that. That's awesome. I love the dimensionality that you've gotten. I don't think I even realized at first that it was kind of recycled material, but you can see it, and I think that adds a lot to it. That's
Thank
so
you.
fun. Even kind of like the texture you get from the cardboard, like the ripping of the paper, it's already kind of there. That's so cool. Very cool. What was going through your mind as this piece came together?
I think I was mostly just considering like what kind of I mentioned, the biological systems, and thinking about like, you know, how mice get calcium from bones and then it goes back into the system through plants and everything else. And I'm just, I guess, curious about what we will give back whenever, I guess, we die or,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, no, that's a kind of a wild thought to play around with. I love that. Let's see. What is something about this piece that you think people might miss? Other than maybe that some of it is recycled, as I just missed that.
Yeah, I think that was what I worried that people would miss, is that making that connection that even though this is like only thing you see is like nature symbols, that it's supposed to be kind of a connection back to us.
Yeah.
And then I also hid like real leaves and biological matter underneath a lot of the pages and stuff.
Okay, it's fun. Yeah, your own kind of little things that you know are there. I love that. Okay, so that kind of wraps up the big meat of our interview. If you could give some inspiring words to others to motivate another artist to participate in a big event like this, what do you think that would be?
I would definitely just encourage them to try. I did not think I was going to get into this show at all, but I'm happy that I was included. So I think I know it's like really scary to put yourself out there. I think most people experience that, but it doesn't hurt to at least try.
No, it can be daunting, but I think once you realize how the process is and you can kind of start to see how that feels for you, I'm sure it gets easier. Mm-hmm. I would hope. I haven't submitted for something big like this before, so I'm not sure. But last couple questions here. What's next for you after Momentum?
Graduating, which I'm really excited about. And then I'm hoping to just continue making art personally for myself and being involved with the community. And I do want to go to grad school eventually, but you know, I'm saving money.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, that's an expensive step, but very cool step. Okay, last two questions. To sum it all up, why do you make art?
I think I make art partly for myself because I enjoy it. And I think most work I make starts with research, and I like learning about things. But I think secondly, I like to teach other people, and I like to hopefully inspire other people to view the world in a little bit of a different way.
I love that. And last but not least, where can people find more of your work? You know, anything that you want to plug?
Mm-hmm. Most of my work can be found on my Instagram page, and then I'm hoping to make a website here soon by the end of the summer.
Okay, okay, cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to be here with us today, and that's all we got.
Thank you.
Yeah.